Bingo. All right. We are officially live.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, all right. So for everyone who's just joining the board, I'm excited about tonight. One of my favorite guests to have on. David, is this your third?
I think third time. Yeah.
You know, that makes you super special.
Yeah.
No one else has been on here 3 times.
Oh, it's an honor. What an honor.
Yes. So I'm super excited to have you. And I'm super excited about the conversation that we're going to have tonight, wrapped around testosterone, about some hormones, and then some super exciting topics and even supplements we're going to introduce that I'm going to lean on you a little bit because I know it's relatively new to the market. And before we get going, let me do at least a brief intro of you, even though you've been here now for the 3rd time. So for those of you who don't know this handsome young man here with the incredible, fancy, stylish haircut, this is Dr. Dave Hogsed. And Dave is not only a personal friend of mine, but I also consider Dave, I consider you a mentor. Every time I see you,
honor.
Yeah. And every time I see you, I hope you know that. And it really comes from my heart. There are amazing people in our profession, and you're one of them. And one of the reasons I say that, and I say that so heartfelt, is that you're an amazing teacher. I love that that you love giving, loving, and serving to your clients and to your fellow colleagues. And that's one of the, my favorite things about you. Now that I
consider you a arch nemesis, because everywhere I go, all I hear is Bart, Bart, Bart. And I, for one, am tired of it. No. I want to remind your listeners, just how much you are out there as just leading the forefront in inspiring doctors who nutrition may not be in their comfort zone. You just got done with a big old conference in Orlando last month for a lot of doctors that traditionally wouldn't be attracted to nutrition, and you're really creating that bridge between chiropractic and clinical nutrition, and hats off to you for that, man.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And I think, and as you know, in this field, I think it's a natural fit. I think that the doctor of the future is combining and has many tools in their belt, quite frankly. Yeah. And I think that is what I know as a consumer myself, I'd love to have a practitioner or someone who's, tending to my health that has a lot of tools, that they have more than just one thing. And we all start with one thing. And yet after, a couple of decades of practice, hopefully we continue just to add to that tool belt. So cool. And for those who don't know, Dave, you speak all over the country. I know you've been at some of you just mentioned that I just got back from one, and you've spoken at that same conference several times. I know you go out west and speak at some of the really big conventions in our profession. And again, hats off to you. It's not easy speaking in front of the peers, yet absolutely one of the more rewarding things we can do. Because when we get to teach our peers, we know that we're having this even, a 10x type impact. Because they get to go back and share with their friends, family, and their patients, of course. All right. Well, welcome aboard, my friend. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you.
So,
and I'm excited about the topic tonight too, and the new developments. We got some very, very cool stuff. Not just for the people listening, but assuming we have a lot of husbands that may not be on board with nutrition yet, and this is the bridge that definitely will get them interested in nutrition and taking supplements that they really need.
Yeah. So in a moment, I definitely want to get into the actual herbs that we're talking about and some of the ancillary ones that might be very supportive of these literally rock star herbs that we know are having a huge impact on performance of things like testosterone. But let's dive into that conversation first and talk about really testosterone in general. Let's talk about the benefits, and let's talk about some of the things that were wrapped around it. But maybe more than anything, let's talk about how frequently right now testosterone we find in our patients being low. I know you do a lot of lab testing. Can you speak to that for just a minute?
Absolutely. And what's happening today is there's this double whammy effect, because there's a natural decline in testosterone, even after the age of 30, it is estimated to go down about 1% each year. So that's the normal, just life cycle that we're sometimes desperately trying to cheat and find loopholes for. But to compound it today's lifestyle is like the perfect storm, our modern American culture with diet, our sleep cycles, what we eat, what we drink, all these different things, the medications we take, testosterone is under attack big time. And in addition to the normal decline, there's so many enemies and antagonists of normal healthy testosterone production. So yeah, the vast majority of American male patients that do a testosterone blood test are going to come back low. But if you'll allow me to go down the rabbit hole a little bit more with that, what makes this topic so murky is that the normals for testosterone are grossly what's the word, lenient, that we want to say. That there's a lot of men going to get a blood test and their doctor says your testosterone's fine because your testosterone's 300 or 350 or maybe even 400. But when you look at the optimal range of what testosterone should be, 700 is the bare minimum optimal range for just feeling vitality, energy, cognitive health, all the benefits we're going to dive into, of having healthy testosterone. So when you look at it through that lens, that stricter, more critical lens, you see that the vast majority of people that get tested really need more testosterone to feel their best.
Yeah, and that's worth repeating. And I want to kind of summarize what you just said there. When we test, for those listeners out there, if you've ever had your testosterone checked, when we get those labs, if the lab comes back and it says, oh, you're at 380 nanograms per deciliter, your doctor could tell you that's normal because it wasn't red flagged. That's the numbers. I think every lab's a little bit different, but they'll say some as low as, David, I've seen them as 275 coming back as normal.
That's the official normal low now. Which is
not that there's nothing normal about that human being, especially if as a male, you're not functioning at a normal level whatsoever.
Right.
The key word there is optimal. And that optimal level is much higher. And quite frankly, I know you do a lot of labs. Well, I don't see a lot of people in optimal levels.
Very
interesting.
It's even getting younger and younger. So we mentioned, after 30, it's declining more, but it's not uncommon to see men in their 20s now with rock bottom low testosterone, just because of all the things in our diet, lifestyle, environment that are working against healthy testosterone levels.
I was reading a study earlier today, trying to just kind of dial in a little bit more. And I was shocked to see that from the year 2000 to the year 2012, the average young American, which is 15 to 39, the average dropped over 200 points.
Wow.
In basically a decade. So I think you're right when you say there's like this an assault or there's an attack on testosterone. So let's go there for a moment, because I think we just assume that testosterone goes down with age. And granted, maybe at 1%. Let's dive into some of the specifics there, because I think it's helpful to understand. I always like getting to the root cause of things. Why are things going down? So I'm going to get you on a couple here. Let's start. We're going to get to nutrition in a moment, but you talked about medications, and of course, we're not telling anyone to come off a medication or anything like that yet. I think it's important maybe to understand that there are medications that are common day medications that people are taking every single day. And it is that group of guys specifically, we're going to talk about women tonight as well, but it is that group of men that also have this big group of symptoms. Do you have any in mind, or do you want me to bring some up in terms of the medications?
Oh, I think we're both thinking of the same one. The king of all prescriptions, the number one winner of the popularity contest for all medications, statin drugs. Lipitor, number one best-selling drug in the US. And to make testosterone and to make many hormones, you have to have cholesterol. That's the building block, foundational root, compound to make these hormones. So when you take a drug that drives your cholesterol down to abnormally low levels, it's 1.5 arms tied behind your back, to be able to make testosterone right out of the gate. Antidepressants, are one that can definitely affect. There's actually a long list. You probably know more of the meds than I do that can interfere with it, but the statins would definitely be the one that's most important for the listeners to check into.
Yeah, and what I always find funny, and I'll give that list in just a moment here. Imagine if you're sitting in your doctor's office and it says, hey, listen, I'm going to give you this statin because your cholesterol is a little high or whatever. And as a side effect, your testosterone is going to go low. I wonder if that was the conversation, how well sales would go. All right. So with that being said,
That would cut it in half.
Yeah, you mentioned anxiety medications, no doubt, depression medications, high blood pressure medications, beta blockers,
Wow.
statin. So all of these. Now, and listen, I'll be honest, I've got patients that are on all those.
Yeah.
I've got patients that are all.
You know what? Talk about current events. 3 hours ago, I had a new patient on testosterone pellets. So for the past 5 years, but surprise, surprise, he got prescribed a statin and a beta blocker around that time. You know, his total cholesterol, his last blood test was 128, which is very, very low.
Yeah.
So he was telling me that even with the pellets, the injected pellets of testosterone, he has a very hard time maintaining normal testosterone levels. And that's a major, major reason why. So I literally just saw this a few hours ago in my office.
And it's such a bummer to watch that seesaw go.
Yeah.
Because that's when we start to use medications, and we're lowering them for one thing, then it causes another thing, and then we're trying to take another thing to counterbalance and interact that. And that's when it gets tricky, because at that point the body really doesn't know what it's doing. So, all right, let's talk technical for a moment. Where does testosterone come from?
The testicles primarily, but also your adrenal health, which I know is a huge passion of yours, taking care of all these people's adrenals, stressed out adrenals, that are watching it, coming in your office. The adrenal glands make a very important hormone called DHEA that can then, act as another precursor for those important sex hormones. And that's where, it does start converging with women's health too, is whether you're a man or a woman, if your adrenal glands are shot. And so my town was direct hit of the hurricane 2 weeks ago. Everybody's adrenal glands are shot right now. We're doing a lot of adrenal support that we'll talk about later, but that affects everything with hormones, not just energy, not just sleep cycles, but yeah, that can affect your testosterone as well. So if you know how to take care of adrenal gland health and, direct gonadal support for the testicles, then those are the two most important. Anything can sabotage testosterone, but those are the two major players.
Yeah, and that, again, that's the interesting conversation, because rarely do we see the conversation wrap around that root cause, where, the patient's being asked questions about where's their stress levels at, how's the health of their body, and ask the other ancillary questions about what's taking place with their body or in their lifestyle relative to testosterone levels. So, all right. So now let's dive into the one I think is probably as relevant as anything, and that's, do you think nutrition plays a role on testosterone?
Oh my goodness, both positively and negatively. And we're seeing, talk about the perfect storm in America right now, is we're seeing a combination of starvation of the nutrition we need to make testosterone, at the same time doubling and tripling our consumption of the foods that knock testosterone down. So the biggest thing diet-wise that is killing our testosterone is the sugar, refined carbohydrate epidemic. So when you start getting blood sugar problems, whether that's mild blood sugar problems or full-blown diabetes, that is a major suppressor of testosterone. And then even if you don't have blood sugar problems, there's so many things missing from the average American diet, like vitamin E, essential fatty acids, and the biggest mineral that you need for testosterone production, zinc. Zinc is rampantly deficient. And part of that is because the more sugar we eat, the more alcohol we drink. We could talk a lot about how alcohol just is an absolute testosterone killer. You think we're making any enemies yet, Dr. Bart, talking about these?
if we haven't, it's about to happen.
Are people leaving the webinar in droves yet?
Yeah.
But yeah, the more sugar and alcohol you consume, the more zinc you lose, which drives testosterone down even more. And then another major deficiency that I know you're passionate about, vitamin D. Yeah. That is another simple but foundational nutrient. If you're low in vitamin D, you cannot, or have a very hard time making optimal testosterone. That's just a small group of the nutrients, but most people fall in one of those categories. They've got blood sugar problems, they're zinc deficient, they're vitamin D deficient. Any one of those three can just sabotage testosterone completely.
For our listeners, as David and I talk here tonight, we're going to talk about all these things that create these deficiencies. And remember, the answer is always going back to a whole food diet, is finding out where you might have deficiencies and using whole food supplementation. So if it sounds like doom and gloom, I promise you, it's really not, because the solutions are really kind of simple. David, I want to go back to zinc for a moment. And zinc's an issue. And one of the bigger issues that we see, because there's another medication that is real commonly and frequently used, I'm gonna put you on the spot, that may inhibit the absorption of zinc. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm gonna guess you're talking about acid blocking drugs like Nexium and Prilosec and all those fun things. That those consistently are in the top 10. They're not as prescribed as statins, but really close. Top 10 prescription drugs. So when you block your healthy stomach acid, then you make it impossible to optimally absorb zinc and many other nutrients like magnesium, calcium, but zinc specifically for hormone, the testosterone connection. Absolutely.
And of course, we know that zinc plays a huge role in our overall prostate health as well.
Yep.
So in not having enough zinc or proper amounts of zinc in the body, especially from a natural source, really sets you up for, a cascade of events going downhill here. All right. So let's go back to the diet and the sugar thing. So this, you have a carbohydrate-based diet or a sugar-based diet. Most of our country does, right? And for simplicity, is it this simple? If we are eating for sources of energy, meaning that we're eating like we're tired and we start to eat food, and we get a little bump, of energy, maybe it's from a piece of bread or a snack or a cracker or a muffin or, something like that. When we get into that cycle of eating for energy, does that have a downstream effect on the way your body's being told to make energy? For example, using testosterone. If I guess what I'm trying to say is there a chance by having all that excess energy coming in through the sources of sugar, is it also a way of telling your body, hey, listen, we don't need your testosterone. You don't need to make this?
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's definitely a factor. And you made me think of one more, reason why that high carb eating, that excess energy, getting that constant stream of carbs in is, we haven't even talked about the more carbs you eat, the more fat you accumulate. And the more fat you accumulate, what hormone goes up with that? Estrogen. Mm-hmm. The direct counter hormone to testosterone. So even if guys' testosterone looks decent, just living on the American diet of refined carbs and sugar with having all that extra belly fat, they could have decent looking testosterone, but all of the symptoms of testosterone deficiency because their estrogen is too high. It's just one more factor of the high carb diet taking them down.
So I guess then that also holds true for women as well. We hear estrogen dominance. Usually we're talking about women.
Yeah.
And so you're saying the same thing when women have that state of estrogen dominance, it's just blocking and inhibiting their testosterone production?
Absolutely. And just the fact that their insulin is going up so high, the more carbs and sugar you eat, the more insulin you release. And especially, with men, it's that simple testosterone issue. With women, when they get that insulin resistance, that estrogen dominance, it just throws everything off track. Thyroid hormones, adrenal hormones, ovarian hormones. So it's kind of like the good news and the bad news are both the same. The bad news is our modern American high carb diet is wrecking everything. The good news is if we can just conquer and get victory in that one area, there's so many hormones that will fall into balance just from getting your carbs and sugar under control. And yeah, there's great therapies that we're going to talk about, great herbs, but that's one that if you don't get a handle on that one issue, even the best nutrition and herbal therapies that we're going to talk about, they're only going to go so far because the effects of that sugar, insulin, estrogen dominance can just steamroll and override all the other healthy things that you're trying to accomplish.
I think that's well said. And it also just kind of rolls right into, a lot of people talk about stress, and I think stress is no doubt the X factor. Yet the reality is that we can increase our capacity to handle stress.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, through using, carbohydrates and sugar as a major fuel source, unfortunately, we are decreasing our capacity. So just really to your point there, that's a spot we got to get under control. And I tell you what, this is the Health Made Simple Show podcast, and I talk about it every week. And we can go back to alcohol in just a moment, because they know crystal clear that I do believe that it makes humans weak.
Yeah.
That we're going to bring it into the body. It always makes the liver work hard. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Yeah. Dialing in that component. If you want, even as we're going to give formulas and kind of these strategies today on how to increase testosterone naturally, if we don't get that part of it under control, you're running uphill. You couldn't be wasting your money, quite frankly. So I'm going to encourage everyone, continue to, one step better every day. And the beauty is, once you find out there's other alternatives, you move back into the God's garden. If it comes from a root plant tree, walks in the garden, swims in the sea diet, we're eating real foods, and we're getting away from those carbohydrates, those empty calories, those things that are spiking the blood sugar. Once you get into that rhythm, then you really get to start to enjoy what energy feels like.
And speaking of enjoying, this may sound, to anybody listening who's never cut out the sugar and the carbs, this may sound like stressful just hearing this. Like, that's like everything that I eat. How am I going to do this? And just to bring this personally for anybody that's in your area, I had the privilege being in your area 2 weeks ago and got to go to your cafe and experience firsthand how low carb keto can taste amazing, and you don't have to feel deprived. You have at that cafe the most amazing chocolate sugar-free shake that what did you compare it to? I can't remember what
a Dairy Queen
Dairy Queen frosting. And it is the most filling, satisfying, sweet tasting, creamy texture. And that's the thing. It's like again, the bad news and the good news is the American diet. If you're just going with the flow, you're not gonna make it with healthy hormones, feeling great, optimal sleep, energy, all these great things. But the good news is these are the best of times to find satisfying, easy, good tasting alternatives for anything that you think you have to give up, whether that's making pizzas, whether it's eating chocolate. You can even make phenomenal homemade ice cream now that has safe, sugar-free alternatives. So the information is out there. You got to be willing to invest a little time to do it, but you don't have to feel deprived with any of these changes that we're making. So I got to give a shout out for anybody in your area. Go to the cafe if you're feeling like there's nothing that's good tasting that's low carb. You have nailed the answers for that, Dr. Bart.
Well, I appreciate that, and really, my wife and her crew really deserve all the credit there.
Yeah.
That would coming up with some of those recipes, especially the keto ones, to make them as yummy as they are. That was some effort. That took some effort to do so, and yet we did it really so we could be quite frankly, part of it was to be in service to the communities, to be able to have this conversation, and then also say, and you can do this. This is an option.
And I'll tell you the ultimate proof of how good you guys have made those recipes is when I came to visit you, I saw a whole group of teenagers outside your store. And that just says it all right there. Their taste buds are not going to lie. If it's good enough for teenagers, good enough for anybody.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, so let's roll forward here, and then let's talk into another, I think, very significant conversation about testosterone, and that's sleep. So I'll let you just roll. How important is sleep, and what role does sleep have in testosterone? And then what role does testosterone have in sleep?
No, that's great to loop it around both ways. But probably the dominant issue for most men right now, if you're talking about which came first, the chicken or the egg, is the sleep deprivation spilling over into low testosterone. So with your workaholic man, or the guy that's staying up watching TV late hours, or on his phone late at night, those blue light disrupting circadian rhythm, sleep cycles, everything like that. Sleep deprivation can affect testosterone in multiple ways, but a simple one to tie it into is back to the adrenal glands. If you're not getting that good sleep, your adrenal glands are going to be stressed. You're going to be pumping out more cortisol. And that's one of the exciting therapies we're going to talk about later is what can be so much of a challenge for getting men's testosterone optimal, especially if they are sleep deprived, is they're pumping out all these stress hormones, this cortisol, which suppresses testosterone. It's another hormone that makes it really hard to, have optimal levels of testosterone. So sleep, if you're sleep deprived, just picture that as a direct cause of increased stress hormones throughout the whole day. And then the worse your stress hormones are, the less your sleep quality is going to be that night. And the less your sleep quality is, the more your stress hormones. And it's a very, very vicious cycle. So like you said, that one piece at a time, you're attacking the carb problems that are sabotaging your health, but sleep is just as important. And I think it's really important to note that the more sleep deprived somebody is, the more they crave carbohydrates. There's direct hormonal links to sleep deprivation. And the more sleep deprived you are, the more of a hormone called ghrelin you produce that makes you more hungry, and specifically hungrier for quick carbohydrate sugar fixes.
Yeah, if anyone ever wanted to really fix their food cravings, listening to what you just said there is critical, because when we are sleep deprived, we essentially are trying to get energy from food the next day. And
you need like an IV drip of quick energy, so you're just snacking on sugar the whole day.
And we've all been there. We've been there where we're literally back into the fridge. We're just trying to get something to get that energy back. And really what the body's asking for is sleep. So, and what's interesting about the testosterone is that we also know clinically that during REM sleep is when you will find your testosterone raises the highest.
Yep.
And that's if you're in REM. The bummer is that if you're having that late night glass of wine, if you're having alcohol at night, the likelihood of you going into REM for any sustained period of time is very minimal.
Yeah.
And then deep sleep, which is how much we rest and really our body physically recovers, is the other part where we have a nice bump of free testosterone. So it's very interesting because as we age, in theory, that deep sleep gets harder and harder to come by. And our lifestyle, our habits are inhibiting the REM sleep. So, a lot of people will say this.
Man, now I'm depressed. You finally got me with that one. That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
But in the same time, we're gonna provide solutions tonight,
Absolutely.
and that's always the fun. And we're gonna make it really, really simple. It's very interesting. I want to walk back and just kind of give you a personal story. Years ago, when I started my practice up in Atlanta, I was going through a lot of stress in my life. And I was 38 years old. And in that time, I was about to make a transition to leaving my office that I built up for 10 years in Atlanta. So super high stress with employment, finances. We're going to sell that office and move to Florida. And simultaneously, my father was dying.
Wow.
So I was under the most stress I've ever been in. And my outlet has always been exercise. And in that time of my life, it was mixed martial arts. I was just literally going all out every night. So I was trying to deal with my stress. Then it got to the point where getting up in the morning, I was just exhausted. Something was wrong. And I finally went and did my labs for the first time as a young male. And I remember the doctor sitting in front of me and says, "You've got the testosterone levels of a 60-year-old man."
Wow.
In the 300s at 38 years old. Physically had a lot of muscle on my body. Yet I was exhausted, needed to eat all day long, exercise. And it was the root cause here was stress and a lack of sleep. And just like you said, it was this vicious cycle perpetuating. The more stress I had, the less I could sleep. So the harder I worked. And I know a lot of people do that. I see them in my clinic all the time. I see that cycle that goes on and on and on. I had the wherewithal, and I had friends and colleagues that were in the health industry and said, "All right, Bart, this is what's going on. Your adrenal glands are tanked."
Yeah.
That's a precursor to your testosterone. So let's, and that's when I first started doing a deep dive into any of this stuff, going, heck, I got to fix this up because this is not sustainable. So how
long did it take you to climb out of that hole, would you say, when you started turning?
All right. So I think that's good. I wanted to get to that anyways. There wasn't one thing, David. We're going to talk about a thing tonight that is, you're going to introduce a new herb that's been out there for a little while. And I'll introduce it now. It's called Tanga Ali. Is that correct? Tanga Ali.
We're all saying it differently because it's so new. Like we've all got slightly different pronunciations, but that's it.
So the research
Tongkarali, you'll hear it all.
And I'm going to let you get into the research on it, because from what I saw at the different lectures I've been to, it's been absolutely phenomenal. I've seen some other podcasts on it. I'm so excited that Medi Herb is providing this, because I know that it's going to be super, super high quality. Anyways, so I went through this phase of not understanding, and I had to learn about my adrenal glands and understand them. But once I started to do that and I incorporated many things, there was a formula, and I'll dial that in for us tonight, because I think there's more than one thing. My missing link was I didn't use anything herbal and I didn't use any vitamins. I was doing it just on lifestyle. And as a result of it, I think it took a lot longer, meaning years, not months, but it took me years, probably the better half of a decade, to really get back into, like, maybe not a decade, but at least 5, 6, 7 years to really get back into what I like to call beast mode. It's where I'm physically strong, mentally strong again, waking up feeling good, knowing that my body's producing good amounts of hormones. And it took some lifestyle adjustments. I wish we had what we're going to introduce tonight. It would have, because I didn't have that link at all. I did it solely through lifestyle. All right. So since I took the cat out of the bag right there, why don't we introduce? So there's a new herb out, David. There's a ton of research. There's all kinds of chit chat going on in all the podcasts and social media channels. Yep. I'm calling it Tonka Ali. You can call it what you want to call it.
That's pretty much how I pronounce it. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Would you please introduce it and tell us a little bit about this?
Absolutely.
Herb?
Yeah. So it's new and old at the same time. So in Malaysia, that's the primary country. I think possibly Vietnam as well, but Malaysia is really where we're getting this treasure of this herb Tonka Ali. They've used it for over 300 years. Okay. They've just known, that, and it grows up to like 30 feet high, this plant, but it's the root actually that's being used. And there's this really bitter compound. When you taste it, if you let a tablet dissolve in the mouth, it's the worst tasting, bitter substance, but it's called bitter quasinoids that have this powerful multi-purpose testosterone enhancing effect in the body. So in Malaysia, they didn't know, hundreds of years ago, they didn't know testosterone or anything about that. They just knew that specifically, it's very interesting. They knew that older men specifically had more dramatic benefits with this herb. And now we know why. Testosterone declining naturally, 1% each year after 30. So it's all, even hundreds of years ago, men have felt the effects of low testosterone, and Tonka Ali was very effective. So they use it as an aphrodisiac. We know, testosterone and libido. Erectile dysfunction, we know testosterone plays a big role with that. But even just physical stamina, exercise, they noticed that older men, were working better. They could just exercise longer without fatigue. So we see it's not just about making a good looking hormone number with this. Now, recently, now that we've really tapped into this herb and started doing some research, the most exciting thing is that Tonka Ali doesn't just have one mechanism of action. So an herb that I know you like, have you had great results with, Tribulus. Tribulus has a great track record for fertility, for libido. Athletes love it. But Tribulus is much more narrow in its therapeutic benefits, the way it works. It helps your pituitary master gland send the right signals to the testicles. And Tribulus is great for men and women with fertility issues as a general hormone balancer. But what's so special about Tonka Ali is all of these depressing things that we've talked about that sabotage testosterone, no matter what the thing is in a man's lifestyle that's affecting their testosterone, Tonka Ali is going to help with that problem. So for example, if it's stress that's sabotaging testosterone, if they're making too much cortisol from their adrenal glands, Tonka Ali has study after study showing that it decreases stress hormones. And right there, every man should be on it, even if they don't have, low testosterone, just for that effect, that it keeps stress hormones in check. But if men have what's called hypogonadism, where the testicles themselves just aren't making enough testosterone, Tonka Ali has a mountain high, list of studies showing it helps with that. As we age, we have a hormone called sex hormone binding globulin that gets higher and higher. And you can think of that, it's normal, But if we get too much, you can think of it as being something that just locks up your free testosterone and prevents your cells from using it. Guess what Tonkato E does? It decreases sex hormone binding globulin. So you just find every year there's more and more studies that come out that find Tonkato E is hands down the most multi-purpose, most male benefit, shotgun effect herb in the body for whatever is sabotaging testosterone. It will address that root cause. Very exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. And one of the things you just mentioned there, which I didn't know, so thank you, is that it actually helped lower the sex hormone binding globulin.
Very effective for that.
For the listeners, the reason that is so huge, you'll often hear us talk about total testosterone levels. And then you'll hear your clinician often say, but really what's important is your free testosterone. So your total testosterone, when we draw blood, that's how much we've found in the serum. That's your total number. But really what's available or how well you feel is going to be dictated by your free testosterone.
And a lot of people aren't having that free testosterone checked with their labs. So that, again, they may be getting a false, rubber stamp like you're okay, but one, they're probably not okay based on those optimal ranges we talked about, but two, they're not checking the free testosterone. And that's, I just had a guy last month, testosterone levels were actually great. Free testosterone was in the tank.
Yeah.
So that's a Tonkato E scenario right there.
Yeah, and two good points there. Oftentimes that free is not tested. And just for everyone listening, if you're going to get your testosterone levels checked, ideally, you'll, like the things you talked about, you get your vitamin D checked with it. You're going to make sure they get your free testosterone checked with it, and you'll get really a whole hormone panel. But those specifically, so at least the fundamentals we get to understand about testosterone. Yet that free testosterone, that's really how we're going to feel. So with all that kind of be mentioned. So I think what's fascinating, what you just said there, is that it works essentially against cortisol, or if against isn't probably the right word here, yet it helps decrease the negative impact of cortisol.
Absolutely.
And what's also neat about that is cortisol often acts as a fat storage hormone as a roundabout way. And so that's one of the things that really got me excited. There's two things that got me super excited about the Tonkato E. One, I saw there was a value in a study there that showed that it increased the motility of sperm. And I know it sounds like a small thing, yet we're seeing more and more infertility cases due to the male at this point.
About 50% of all fertility cases now have a male sperm component. You talk about scary studies just in the last, since 1980, just how much sperm count and sperm motility, is just dropping off more and more and more. And the normal accepted ranges are becoming broader and broader just to keep up with how sick we're becoming as a population. We're getting so unhealthy. Just let that sink in. We're not able to reproduce. Yeah. That's the level of, sickness we've gotten to.
And that's really when I saw the study come out like that, I was like, wow, this is fantastic, because of what you just said. And that's scary. A lot of people are not wanting to have that conversation about we're literally making weaker human beings. We're becoming weaker, because if you can't reproduce, that's a weakness. That's a bummer right there.
Yeah.
All right. So back to the stress modulators. The beauty is just by taking it. This is where I think when we sometimes can use supplementation that can then kind of end up and help create a cascade of changes down the road. All of a sudden you feel a little bit better. Your free testosterone is going up a little bit. And next thing you know, you decide, well, you know what? Maybe today I'm going to go to the gym. I'm finally motivated. And by the way, testosterone it's the motivation hormone. That's where our motivation comes from.
Yep.
And especially, I don't know what, David, you're considering old, but just be careful with that, right?
What's that?
I don't know what you're considering old.
Oh, yeah. When did I say old? Did I say?
You said the older males.
Oh, I consider myself an older male.
Okay, fair. I'm just playing with you. Yeah.
Hey, I want to piggyback on because I don't think we've really dug into, for guys especially listening, and they think, well, my libido, is fine, and I don't have any problems in that area. The effects of testosterone in the body are so far reaching, and you hit on a really major one, is that opening your eyes in the morning and just that first feeling of like whether I'm excited to go tackle the day
Mm.
or I just want to hide under the covers. I think that's one of the best indicators of testosterone.
Yeah.
Right there is testosterone is that hormone that makes us do crazy stuff. to go into a scary world, and work in this scary world. And when it drops off, your motivation, your confidence, your cognitive performance, brain fog, depression, and anxiety. So many more studies coming out now about mental health and testosterone. So this all talk about that vicious cycle. The lower your testosterone, the less your stress tolerance, and you're going to pump out more cortisol. So if you can keep your testosterone optimal, you may be under the same amount of stress, but you're not going to react as negatively to that stress just by having optimal levels of testosterone. Yeah. So you can't overemphasize the importance of optimal testosterone for global health. And there's some recent studies. I mean, there's not tons out there yet, but there's more and more about the role of testosterone in metabolic health for blood sugar, of course, fat burning. And so again, this vicious cycle or positive cycle, it all depends which cycle you want to follow.
Yeah. So, and again, so many things there. Back to the brain health and mental health. We know that it has a great impact on anxiety and depression, and then also down the road, dementia.
Yep.
Huge. We kind of put dementia into that category of something that happens as a result of cardiovascular disease, as type 2 diabetes. And all of those things are improved with a better level of testosterone, especially if you're able to naturally produce this. So again, super excited about this. All right, so let's talk about, so you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, someone could use Tanga Ale straight up, even if they haven't made alterations yet to their lifestyle, which by the time they're done this, they're going to choose to anyways. And what's really cool is I think at this point, anyone who's listening to a podcast like this or something like it, you're in your health groove. You're looking for opportunities to, maybe tighten up your diet a little bit, recognize that stress hormones, they gobble up your sex hormones. You're looking for these little edges that you can keep stacking in life. And that's how I'm going to encourage it. Try not to make these huge sweeping overhauls that you can't maintain, but just add one little thing a day.
And Tongkat Ali that is the perfect way to describe it, is a little simple edge that you're adding that has this cascade, effect. There's things that we can control, and there's things that we can't control, that affect our testosterone. And, if we haven't talked about daunting enough topics tonight, we haven't even talked about the chemicals we're exposed to that suppress our testosterone. And I think that's one of the reasons why more men benefit from it than ever before. Even if your diet is great, your lifestyle, you're getting the exercise, there's things in the environment that act like estrogen that make it harder to balance testosterone. And Tongkat Ali is leveling the playing field for the things that we can't control that can suppress testosterone.
Tell us about some of those chemicals. What are we seeing that are in everyday products or foods or bottles? What do we run
plastics would be a major one. And I rely too much on the bottled water, getting the plastics in it. Pesticides, there's pesticides that mimic estrogen, act like endocrine disruptors. Of course, some of those medications, that we talked about, those directly interfere. Estrogen in our food supply, to fatten up the cattle. And so dairy and meat that's not organic, we're getting estrogen there. So what have I missed? I know you probably got something else in that.
When I think of chemicals, I think anything that, obviously I'm an advocate of real whole foods, right? Yet I think sometimes this is how simple I want to make this. If we bring in junk in the body, you can't get rid of junk. Your body then always goes into defense mode, and it's a stress response, which means you're going to have an immune response. When that is taking place, if anything's coming into the body, perfumes, fragrances, all of these things, lotions, potions, GMO foods, pesticides, you name it, anything that comes into the human body that wasn't designed, literally doesn't come from God's garden. At that point, your body stops doing what it was doing for replenishment, repair, rebuilding. It stops that moment, no matter how many good things you have there, and it starts to work on the invader. It's just like if a bad guy entered your castle, you're going to stop playing checkers with the family, even though that's a wonderful thing. and you're going to go after the invader. And if this is happening on a regular basis, chemicals, and I saw a thing the other day about how many new chemicals there are in the food industry. It was hundreds, or it was something, some crazy number that we can't even keep track of. Every year they just add up new ones. But if the bad guys are coming in, you're always setting yourself up for just down regulating human function. And real quickly, I want to go back to motivation for anyone out there that, because I went through this phase when this was part of my low testosterone. I've always been very driven in my life. I've always never had to like get someone motivated. I loved motivational things. Yet I've always been very driven and maybe even a little competitive. Yet there was a phase I was not. And it was a wrestling match with my brain every single day to get up and go do the things that I knew I should be doing, or I knew I wanted to do, but the creativity, the passion, it was all fading away. And I know there's a lot of guys out there, and I want to talk about
a lot of guys.
A lot of guys out there. They might be 45, 55, 65 years old. And I think if nothing else, I want to tell them, it doesn't have to be that way. That's not normal aging. That's down regulation of human function and human health as you age.
Yep. And that's the saddest part, is that all those guys you're talking about, they've just given up and accepted that this is aging. This is the new normal. And this is just, it's all downhill from here. This is the way, that it's going to be. And it is definitely not, even just with how recently we've had Tongkat Ali available, just the feedback, that we're getting. Again, take all the libido, sex benefits off the table. And just for that, waking up, feeling motivated and energized, that's one of the most common feedback, profound feedback that I'm getting from my patients. And I'll tell you just myself, I've noticed just in the 3-4 months taking it, is that the mornings are so different. It takes a lot shorter time to crawl, bouncing out of bed instead of, that, like you said, wrestling match with your brain to try to convince yourself to go into the world. And I'm so grateful for it just for that. Definitely makes a huge difference.
Back in my journey, that's what I didn't have. I didn't. And I think that's why it took me years to really see a change in my testosterone levels. And I think we can bring them up naturally. And I've seen so many people do it. And I'll talk about some of the other strategies yet. Now, knowing that we have this as a tool in our toolbox, absolutely amazing. So let's talk about women for a second. Are there any studies or any benefits here for a woman to be taking Tongkat Ali?
So if you want to do a visual comparison, here's the studies of Tongkat Ali for men. Here's the studies for women. This is a man's herb primarily, but the benefit with women that has been found for sure in the studies is physical, performance, at athletic performance. This is an area where, again, Tribulus is going to have a little bit of an edge on Tongkat Ali. The herb Tribulus is more multi-purpose, both sexes. Tribulus is great for hot flashes, fertility support, libido. There's plenty of studies for Tribulus with low libido in women too. So I would put it, Tribulus is like the can't go wrong, men and women, there's going to be benefit. But if for men, with these hormone deficiencies, that's where Tongkat Ali really shines and outperforms, other herbs. And one of your favorite herbs, I know we share this in common, ashwagandha. I think that's, for women, to me, ashwagandha is like there is women's Tongkat Ali. Every woman could benefit from it. It has thyroid benefits, and we know most women struggle with healthy thyroid, phenomenal adrenal support, sex hormone production, DHEA, estrogen balance. So I think if you were making an analogy, ashwagandha would kind of be like the female Tongkat Ali.
It's interesting you say that. It'd probably be good for all women. That literally is one of my go-to for all my women.
Yeah.
And I say that just because it has so many health benefits, like you said, thyroid function.
It's that multi-purpose shotgun effect for everything.
Phenomenal. So for our listeners too, I'll make sure that all of this gets in the show notes, at least when my staff gets a hold of this podcast.
And by the way, Dr. Bart, I think we really have to mention for the super stressed male, Tongkat Ali plus ashwagandha is the 1-2 punch for balancing hormones. It's amazing synergy between those two herbs. So I just had to give that plug for the combination of those two things together.
Yeah, and I love ashwagandha for so many reasons, especially for its ability to kind of dysregulate all the stress hormones that are taking, that the body gets stuck in that fight or flight type situation, and its impact on the hypothalamus gland, phenomenal. So what about dosing? Is it something and then
that's the best news about Tankatali. We know, working with Men's Health, guys don't like taking a lot of supplements. The beauty of Tankatali is there's been so much evidence now with all the different studies. We've got very locked down what the effective doses are. And from the Mediherb extract, it's 2 tablets per day, 200 milligrams of this very specific Tankatali extract, very concentrated in that tablet. 2 tablets does it. And there are times you could dose higher if you want to get, a faster effect. But 2 tablets per day definitely gets the job done. And I think that's something that a lot of men are going to appreciate about it.
Yeah. And if they're doing that and they're also monitoring, I have a lot of people that love to monitor their labs. If they were measuring, how long would you say before they redid their lab work, and what expectations, do you think they should have?
Yeah. So, minimum 3 weeks, month is probably, even better to give Tankatali before retesting. But that's the great news, is you can get testosterone rechecks, blood tests, so inexpensively now. So, if you want to check it every month for a while just to see how things are coming along, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to do that. What you can realistically expect, especially the lower it is, probably the better news for a more dramatic increase, but it's not, uncommon for a bump of 200 points of total testosterone just with that one therapy. And, it all depends on lifestyle factors, but if you don't see a change, then it means there's something else really significantly off track that, you need to address, because Tankatali is the most bankable. And I think this is really the best way to put it, is we have a lot of great herbs and nutritional supplements that do benefit testosterone. Tankatali is the most bankable for results. If you're going to take one thing that you would expect to see a good blood test change, there's nothing that's more dependable than Tankatali for that.
All right. So with that being said, let's imagine that you could wave a magic wand and everyone could have Dave's perfect wish list to support testosterone levels naturally. And there was no, well, that's too many, that's too little.
Okay.
And what would, if you had if you were trying to create the perfect formula, you do this, and then I'll do what I would suggest for lifestyle actions to take. So
okay, absolutely. So ashwagandha, ashwagandha would definitely be in there. The Mediherb ashwagandha forte, the magic number for that dose wise is 3 per day to get the most research amount of those, what's called withanolides, that help your hormones. Another herb we haven't talked about yet, but it is like a male superstar, is Korean ginseng. So the rhodiola ginseng formula that we both love, 3 tablets per day of that.
Let me interrupt real quick. I want to add something that Korean. One of the beauties about that Korean ginseng too, is, as I was doing a deep dive on just infertility, is that too has studies showing that it'll increase sperm motility.
Yeah,
so another great pairing right there.
And that's what's so exciting is, Tankatali, it's like all these studies just by itself, but then we take it in. Ashwagandha has a whole mountain of studies for sex hormone balance, and then Korean ginseng for fertility, vitality, all these different things. And that Korean ginseng is so important for the man that is already, your scenario you mentioned, in burnout phase. When you've already crossed, and who you are listening, you're not just stressed, you're not just tired, but you are burnt out. You need Korean ginseng as part of that protocol. And Dr. Bart does a lot of blending with liquids with that in the office, but you want the simple tablet. It's called Rhodiola Ginseng Complex, 3 tablets per day of that. So from the herbal side, those are my 3 favorites. Tankatali, 2 per day. You could go up to 4 for, faster effect. Ashwagandha, 3 per day. Rhodiola ginseng, 3 per day. From the nutritional component side, the standard process supplements, we've talked about this concept of eating glands that support the gland. And this may sound strange and foreign to, some people listening, but cultures across the globe have incorporated testicles into the diet. Mountain oysters is the term that we use in the US. And let's just be real, that's not going to happen in the US for our dainty sensibilities of what we will eat. We won't even eat liver anymore. Liver is deemed too disgusting. So there's no way we're going to add mountain oysters, testicles to our diet. So supplementation, and an easy one, Simplex M from Standard Process. And the beauty of that, it doesn't just contain the testicle support, it contains pituitary, thyroid, adrenal, and testicular support. So for the man that, again, is burned out, their endocrine glands are just run down. That is a beautiful formula. So a dose I like using with that is 4 tablets twice a day. Yeah,
that one right there, David, that's a go-to right now, how we're using it in the clinic. Inevitably, the person whose testosterone is going down, something else is going on. Usually some burnout with the adrenals, usually some down regulation of the gonads, diet having a huge impact on that. So that Simplex M, brilliant product, literally brilliant, because you get all the glandulars kind of in one. So that's very simple. And I go a little higher dose than that, somewhere around, I usually go between 4 and 6 a day. And I'll usually
4 twice a day is what I said. So
4 twice a day. Okay. So I'm usually about 6 a day, which is 3 twice a day.
So I beat your dose. Take that.
And it's because there's so much going on in those tablets. So people understand there's really 4 different entities in that. All right. So I didn't mean to cut you off. So
no, I mean, that really is like the fundamental one from Standard Process, but then there's a lot of others you could add, like, we don't get enough good oils and vitamin E. So there's a simple, really inexpensive formula called wheat germ oil. And wheat germ oil is a great vitamin E, fatty acid. And think of wheat germ oil as just being like the raw materials for your body to be able to make testosterone. So it's a simple product, 6 per day. That would, there's others you could add, but that would be kind of my main wish list, right? Oh, zinc as well. Definitely a source of zinc. And there's a lot of ways you could do that, but zinc is a make or break mineral if you want to make testosterone.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Dave. So I'll give a quick just lifestyle things that I think this is kind of the route that I took to eventually be able to get my testosterone levels back, and then really what I call my life back, quite frankly, get motivated again, feel good, et cetera. And first one, top of that list was sleep. I get my wife to thank for that. She basically turned my TV off every night, so I couldn't watch it through the evening, into the late night or watching that blue light.
That was a fun conversation the first time she turned that TV, just for the TV.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't even a conversation. It was just, this is what happens. Click, done. So sleep was a huge one. And then I started to incorporate some of the other fun stuff, is what I call them. Intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Made a huge impact on my awareness and my reliance on carbohydrates for fuel. And once I was able to overcome needing carbs or needing to constantly eat for fuel, then my body was able to then learn how to burn fat for a little bit of fuel. And then under that same little stress, simultaneously start to rev up the need for testosterone as a fuel source, which is pretty cool. And then diving a little bit deeper, and I've done some other, podcasts on these, but going into hot and cold therapies. I have some clients right now that are just using ice tanks, or, really like a plunge, and they're using some of these other lifestyle things, but the plunge being the no heat, just the plunge, and really watching testosterone levels start to climb up little bit by little bit by little bit.
Wow.
So, yeah. So these natural stressors, in the event you're not already tapped out.
Right.
But if you're tapped out on your stress, you got to rebuild the system, use your adrenals. And that, I think in that whole category there, if there was anything I would add into that, is if you know that inherently that part of your lower testosterone is a result of being under stress for a decade or 5 months, or going through a divorce or loss of a loved one, or you moved or lost a job, and something that's prolonged, I would probably throw in some specific adrenal support.
Yeah.
I know you're getting a little bit of that in that Simplex M, but if I know that, and if you are that individual, everything just tanked, and it was a big cause was stress, then go ahead and get with your, your clinician and make sure that you're supporting your adrenals properly as well. Wow, I think we just
You
covered a
can't
lot.
get too much adrenal support in every one of those lifestyle scenarios that you mentioned. Like,
Yeah,
the support, the better.
I want to make another just kind of note for the women of testosterone. Ladies, testosterone is hugely important for you. Hugely. Yeah, libido, vitality, muscle mass, strength and stability, mental acuity, everything, motivation. And then as we age in life, the challenge, if your estrogen's going up, your testosterone goes low. And then you start to lose muscle mass. And then you start to use more cortisol as your energy source. And then we start to develop, and I phrase it sometimes as like the skinny fat. So anything you can do to maintain your muscle mass. So, and one big one I missed in there, David, too, is your favorite is push-ups and exercise, right? Yeah.
Shaming me in front of everybody.
My new saying, and I don't know if I said it when you were in town here, but it's hard to kill a strong person. And I mean that I mean that on many levels. Like, I think if you're physically strong, it gives you an air of confidence. It makes you feel good because you're doing something good for your body and you feel physically fit and physically strong. And to be spiritually strong and to be emotionally strong. If you have those three qualities, you're physically, spiritually, and emotionally strong, you're a hard one to kill. So be hard to kill, right? So that's
a good t-shirt.
Yeah, right. All right. I mean, I can't believe it. We've already rolled through about an hour here. All right, David, I'm going to put you on the spot. I got one more last question for you. You've had this question before. You've been on the show 2 times. All right. For our audience, this is the Health Made Simple show. We want to keep it simple. We want to help them become as close to they possibly can to becoming superhumans. What is the one thing that you would suggest from tonight to get them to be as close to superhuman as possible?
So for every man, especially over 40 years old, that simple thing to add to definitely get you closer to superhuman is tone cut Ali height. It's testosterone free height. It straightens out stubborn ED height. But it's not just for the men's height. It strengthens immunity height. Builds vigor and vitality height. It increases fertility by increasing sperm count and motility. It's tone cut Ali. Since the 1950s, testosterone has been taken a dive. It's the most important hormone for a man to feel alive. As we age, our bodies make less of it, and it doesn't feel good. But to make matters worse, it's dropping lower than it should because of plastics and pesticides and too much estrogen. This chemical attack on our testicles is truly a sin. We need a game-changing therapy to turn this all around. And it turns out that Malaysia is where the answer is found. They've been using Tom Kat Ali for over 3 centuries, and it's the modern day answer to feel like Hercules. Come on now, Tom Kat Ali. Hype. It's testosterone free. Hi, my brothers, take this advice from me. You got to get your tone cut Ali.
Oh,
that's it.
Oh my, I did not see that coming, David, but I should have seen that coming, but I did not see that coming. Oh my goodness. Again, why I love you so much and why I appreciate everything that you do. All right, my friend. Well, thank you for being here. And thank all the listeners. Again, keep doing your thing. Keep sharing this out. Keep spreading the love. If you're on Spotify or on the Apple things, give us a little shout out. Give us some 5-star ratings, all that good fun stuff. David, I appreciate you. You know, if you need anything from me, I'm always here for you.
Likewise, buddy.
All right. Y'all be awesome. Take care, everybody.